So how can we measure and predict patterns in birth, deaths, and survival in a population? Well, we can use life tables. Life tables can show us survival and reproductive rates as well as how they vary with age, size, or life cycle stages. And there are two main types of life tables. We have a cohort life table, which allows for the complete following of all members of a population and the counting of the survival and reproduction of them. And then we also have a static life table, which records the number of living individuals of each age in a population and their reproductive output. Now, cohort life tables are the optimal way to create a life table because they are completely accurate for that cohort because every single member is counted. However, this data is very difficult to maintain because you have to track every member of a cohort. And for longer living animals, this would take a tremendous amount of work. So it's typically only used for short living animals. However, static life tables are not as accurate for representing a population because it only samples individuals in a population at one point in time. So you would go through and count every single individual, their ages, everything like that. And therefore, this method is far easier to use since it can be done for any organism regardless of their lifespan. But there are things that you don't learn through this type of life table, like when the species typically reproduce in their age, among other things. So what do life tables tell us? Well, they can tell us the population ages structure. They can tell us how many members of the population are at that certain age. They can also tell us how fast the population is growing or declining. And they can tell us where the survivalship patterns are and when typical mortality is. So what are the variances in life tables? Well, X would represent the age or stage of the individual. NX represents the number of individuals in that stage. LX represents the percent of the original cohort that survives to that stage. DX is the probability of individuals to die during a certain stage. And QX is the percent that die between the stages. And BX is the number of offspring produced per individual. So here we see a life table, X representing months of life, and NX is the number of individuals at that stage or month. We can get the NX simply by counting every individual that is that old in a population. Then we can get the survivorship by dividing the number of alive per stage by the number of individuals at the initial point. So at 3 months, there would be a 27.2% survivorship. Then we can get the probability of mortality by taking the LX, or the survivorship, out of the survivorship and then subtracting it from the survivorship at the next older stage. So if we take LX equals 1 from 0 months, subtract LX equals 0.5 from 1 month, we then get a DX of 0.5. Then we can get the percent of mortality between stages by taking the DX and dividing it by the LX at each stage. So if we take 1 and divide it by 0.5, we get a QX of 0.5. So what did we learn from all of this? Well, we learned that all isopods die before 6 months of age in this population, and that a significant number of isopods die before 1 month of age. And after 1 month of age, survival rate is relatively constant until isopods reach 4 months in age. So here we have an example of a static life table, this time in black-capped chickadees. We immediately have a problem here, though, as we have more individuals in year 3 than year 2. And this error leads us to having a negative number for year 2, which would mean that some birds came back to life. And that is one example of why cohort life tables can tell us significantly more than static life tables. From this life table, we can tell that survival of birds to age 1 is relatively high, and that most mortalities occur between 1 and 3 years old, with all birds dying before 6 years of age. However, since this is a static life table and these birds are not being tracked, we do not know when they typically give birth in this population.